Hi, welcome to Sustain Talks. Today I'm joined by Lewis Crowe, Head of Membership and Commercial, and Chris Fletcher, Director of Policy, both from Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. We have partnered with Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and we've had so many great conversations about sustainability, about social responsibility, and as a chamber, as the largest chamber, they're doing so much, and I thought it'd really be good to hear the kind of things they're doing. But let's start with a bit more of an introduction, what you each do, and yeah, tell us a bit more about your roles. Lewis, let's start with you.
Oh, fantastic. Firstly, thanks so much, Sam, for having us both on the podcast today. It's great to have the opportunity to discuss these topics with you in a bit more detail and share our thoughts as the UK's largest chamber of commerce. So in terms of my role at the Chamber, I'm Head of Membership and Commercial here at Greater Manchester Chamber. So I'm part of a team of 3 who look after our Membership and Commercial department, which is quite a varied role. We cover all aspects from retention and recruitment of new members for the Chamber, all the way through to public sector contracts, delivery of our events and management of our venues. So it's quite diverse what we do, but it's a really satisfying and fulfilling role because, you know, no 2 days are the same, which I'm sure Chris will say is the same for him in his role here at the Chamber. Yeah.
And what about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm policy director, and usually that needs a little bit of explanation to people because people think, well, what does that mean? Do you write the rules for things? Well, no, it's the opposite, actually. What I try and do, keep part of my role, is trying to interpret the rules, the policy and the announcements that come out from government, both at a national and a local level, obviously through the Mayor's office. Try and interpret what that actually means for business, gather the views on that, and then try and feed that back up as well. So it's as Lewis said, you know, there's no 2 days are ever the same, and certainly in the current climate, there's just so much going on. It's literally, you don't really know from one day to the next what your focal point, you know, is going to be. There's a lot of issues affecting business at present, and obviously we'll get into that later on. I've been at the Chamber coming up for 19 years now. I was involved on the policy side and everything, so I can even remember the campaigns, for example, when things like Metrolink was in danger of being scrapped, the Metrolink extension or whatever. So yeah, I got a whole history of all sorts of things, but I can honestly say the present climate has probably never been as challenging for business, and there's probably never been as many things to really get involved with and work on behalf of our members for. Work closely with Lewis and the membership team there, and yeah, it's a very interesting sort of portfolio to have at the present moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you say that it is interesting times. There's a lot of complexities for businesses to get their head around, certainly with sustainability, because it is everywhere. Every sector you go to, it's completely across sector. But for businesses and small businesses and medium and large businesses saying the wrong thing, we've seen a lot of that recently. How do you, let's start with what sustainability means to you, Chris. What your thoughts around sustainability and how that with your members?
Yeah, I'll start off with saying what it isn't, and it isn't just about being green. It's a much wider you know, series of issues than that, really. And I guess I was having a look over the last couple of days about you know, definitions of sustainability and what it means to business, and it's about having that sort of positive effect, not just on business but across the community, society, the economy, and linking all that together. You know, if you can leave somewhere in a better state than what you originally found it, that's an element of sustainability. And that also, the implication in that is that sort of longer term bit as well. You don't just do something for the here and now, you do something that's going to have and continues to have an impact, a positive impact going forward. I think for some businesses, they just see it as, and rightly so, there's nothing wrong in this, but they just see it through the lens of being net zero. But there's a lot more to it than that, and a lot more impact that businesses can have right across the piece, really. So I think it's important that we do get that whole view, really, of what sustainability actually is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that holistic view is very, very important. And I always talk about being sustainable is also about building a sustainable economy. And something else that we associate sustainability with, what we do with Responsible Futures, is being socially responsible as well. And I know, Lewis, you've done a lot of work around that, but what do you think for businesses and in your own organisation as well, what does being socially responsible mean to you?
Well, it's a really interesting question, to be honest, and I think it's something that we've seen a greater desire from the business world to be socially responsible, to take care of their own employees, but also to have an impact on their community. That's something that we've always tried to do as a Chamber of Commerce, and we're very, very lucky that the leaders within our organisation, like Chris with us today, but also Clive Memmott, our CEO, they've always been that way minded. We're very, very different from many other chambers where we don't just focus on business and commerce. We like to be a part of the civic makeup of our region. And we're also, in a way, quite fortunate to be based in the centre of Manchester, which is a city that is very inclusive, diverse, and does try to somewhat lead the way in those areas. I would say, with regards to our members, I've seen a massive step change in recent years about businesses not just wanting to be socially responsible for the benefit of being a good organisation and giving back, but also for two other reasons. Firstly, to attract talent. People want to work now for businesses that are socially responsible and that they feel that they believe in the ethics of that business. And also, in a similar vein, to attract the ability to develop new business opportunities. In the same way that all of us have seen over years, sustainability become vital in tendering and bids. And of course, compliance, like GDPR, became paramount really in your bids. You had to make sure your whole supply chain was GDPR compliant. We're seeing a step change towards businesses wanting to really showcase their ethical position as an organisation to help them to acquire new customers, win tenders, win bids, develop new partner relationships. And all of that at the same time also helps them to be more attractive, both in terms of employee engagement to their existing employees, but also attracting new talent, which we all know is absolutely vital at this time with the way the job market is.
It's crazy. I'm like, the last 2 weeks, I've had so many conversations with companies that are struggling. They've got loads of jobs open, even that they're doing good. They've just got to communicate it more and get out all the good things that they're doing as a company. I think gone are the days where you say we're going to give a free piece of fruit in the morning. It's got to be more than that, because people are looking for being valued, and that's hard to show in a company, right?
Yeah, very much so. And also, it's the same's happened with purchasing power and with individuals, because now through good work, sustainability, for example, is part of our everyday dialogues. That now means that people are willing to pay slightly more for a better quality, better resourced, better produced product that looks after their staff properly, or gives money back into the local community, or supports local causes, or recognises, the need to support, for example, a neurodiverse workforce, for example. Yeah. All of these things are affecting our purchasing power. And I think, everybody out there now is looking at, when they make a buying decision, should I purchase from that company, or should I spend ever so slightly more to purchase from another company, which I know are doing their best to do good? And if you can do good within the local area, that supports you greatly as well, because we've seen it all with the rise of artisan kind of food markets and things like that. People like to buy locally sourced, locally produced products. And I think that all stands to the same point. Businesses now need to showcase their reputation, not just in terms of the quality of their product or service, but in terms of their ability to look after their staff, look after the local community, be sustainable in the ways that you and Chris mentioned earlier, and generally showcase the fact that they are a good contributor to society at whole. And I think that social responsibility question that you asked before really transcends all of those areas. It's health and well-being of your own staff, it's investment in local community, it's willingness to check your supply chain to make sure that they're ethical and you're sourcing products, parts, or services from companies that are like-minded. And nowadays, I think, whereas company values used to be something that were somewhat confined to the boardroom and to the board papers, I think now it's more and more important that businesses showcase their company values on their website and you know, push those out into the public domain, because people want to buy from organizations that show the same values that they believe in.
Yeah, and I think those values have to be meaningful. It's really interesting. I used to work for a very, very large company, and they had 10 company values, and I couldn't today name you one of those company values because they didn't really have any meaning. But I went to working with a company at the moment, and their company values, when you listen to it and you see the passion in the way that they deliver it, it really means something. It comes through in their communications, and I think that's so important. What about in terms of the things that you're doing around the city and the things that your members can do and for business when it comes to decarbonisation? Because you mentioned before, Chris, net zero, and it's hard to you know, you really have to make a lot of changes. But what kind of things are you doing or talking about with your members?
There's a number of things again at present. I mean, it's going from, for example, we're engaged with the Be Net Zero campaign, which is basically looking at how we get, you know, decarbonised Greater Manchester and the role that business have in it. By what is a very short time scale, and you know, it's rapidly approaching. The time for action is now, really, and that involves a variety of things, hooking into existing programs to national level, but also looking at what can be done on a real local level. I guess the starting point for many, and I was having to think about where we are with our particular journey to this. A lot of it is around just measuring in the first instance what you're actually producing from the point of view of carbon. You know, if you don't know what you're currently producing, it's very difficult to see how you can reduce it and whatever. And I do know pre-COVID, we were beginning to go down that route, and it's something we do have to pick up again on that. You can make your easy, simple changes, you know, public transport as opposed to other forms of travel, etc., etc. And I also think the Chamber's got a role to communicate to business as well, to make sure they're aware of what those opportunities are, and to get them engaged with it as well. We do a lot of work. We did a lot of work, for example, around November in COP26, you know, doing a lot of work with our members. I've done a couple of talks with members that were there at COP26, the findings, etc., and how we can portray that and actually embed it into something as well. Because what we've got to do is make sure that it's seen as business as normal. That we can't see it as, oh, this is my day-to-day operation. Oh, and this bit I've tagged on at the end is my net zero strategy. We've got to include it right the way through. And I think it's interesting because I do think in the early stages of the pandemic, you know, going back 2 years ago, everybody was suddenly, you know, saying the air's great, you know, there's no planes flying, the traffic's not there, etc. Isn't this great? Well, fast forward to today and the traffic's as bad as ever, and one thing and another. So we've got to almost start some of this again, really, in the new world that we're doing it. So I think there's a range of things. There's some very practical stuff out there, but there's also a lot more that needs to be done just around that wider communication bit. And the important thing I think that we do have, and this sounds odd what I'm going to say, is I think actually some of the problems we're getting and seeing and hearing from business around the energy costs is actually a huge opportunity to say, right, well, actually, if you started to do this, you can actually reduce your costs, which is sometimes the main attack point you've got to make on this stuff. That's really what gets business interest. But by doing that, you also then begin to impact on your carbon footprint. And so it's possibly a way, not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but it's possibly a way of beginning to use current circumstances to get those longer points over. You know, and as I said, these deadlines, you know, 2038 deadline, the 2030 deadline for the stopping sale of diesel car, all this, that, and the other. Time's rapidly moving on, and there isn't a great deal of action actually beginning to take place or obvious. So I think people are going to have a bit of a rude awakening, I think, if people continue to just say, yeah, we'll get round to it. We can't afford that. It's got to start a lot sooner than I'll do that next week. You know, we've really got to start on this now.
I totally agree. I don't think that we're acting quick enough. And, you know, the best thing about you as a chamber and your reach, I think it's 4,200 members, am I right there around that? You know, you have such a big reach, and people will look to you, businesses will look to you for advice and guidance on how they get to net zero, or what more they can do. One of those things is, and obviously a lot of your members are suppliers and working with supply chain. Do you do much due diligence on your supply chain, or coming out of COVID? Is it something that you've been thinking about as a chamber?
Yeah, it is, and it's right across the piece, isn't it? Again, picking up on what Lewis said beforehand, it's about looking at those people that you want to be associated with and looking at it and saying, right, actually, if we're going to be this body that, you know, is leading on a number of these things, and we've got an obligation almost to be like that, well, we've got to make sure, you know, that we're dealing with businesses that fulfill those obligations as well. There's an initiative in Greater Manchester called the Good Employment Charter, and part of that is that businesses should be, you know, have social value as part of what they do. And, you know, local authorities now are getting quite tough with things like this to say, if you're actually not a member of the Good Employment Charter, or at least you can't show the evidence around things like that, then, you know, we're not going to buy from you. So it's a forcible way of making businesses, you know, think about that. We're not at that stage yet. We are members of the Good Employment Charter ourselves, and we encourage our members to join it too, because this is the way things are going. So there's probably more that we can do, being totally honest around this. But certainly it's something there that we are aware of now, and we're building that into our mechanisms to say, right, actually, you know, these are the type of businesses with these ideals, these values, these are the type of people that we want to work with, and vice versa. And I think, you know, we've got to make that change. We've got to make that stand somewhere and start to do that. I do think COVID's had a massive impact right across the piece. I think we're still on that outward trajectory from it. But like I said, that's no excuse for not doing it. We've got to start on this now and begin to move forward.
Yeah, I think that I think we're going to be on that trajectory for a long time. You know, we have all been affected in different ways in the way we work. You know, I'm sitting in my house here, and you two in different rooms, whether you're in different buildings, but we work differently. Our lives are different. Our expectations as people are different. You know, you mentioned social value. It's so important today to think about social value. You know, I talk a lot about ESG, and the S in ESG is starting to come out quite a lot. So you have your own net zero plans? We're going to be at net zero by 2030, and we have a clear goal? Sorry, you were talking before about net zero. I'm interested to hear in that, and we've got a webinar coming up on net zero as well. So what are you planning there?
It's something we've got to work at, to be quite honest, Sam. We're not there yet. If you said to me, what date are you going to be net zero, I've not got that answer at the present moment in time, because again, we're still in that process of, you know, doing that audit bit, looking at where bits of the organisation, what we need to do, etc. But that doesn't mean to say we haven't been active over the last couple of years. You know, again, prior to the pandemic, we've got a fantastic meeting facilities and event spaces here. We got the Green Award for them because the activities that were going in there were net zero. You know, we've got a huge range. The cup I'm drinking out of here, it's all recyclable. You know, we've got monitors in the building that turn the lights on and off. You know, sometimes if you're not particularly active at your desk and there's only you in, you suddenly wonder what's going on because the lights have gone off. So occasionally you see people waving their arms around to turn them back on. So we've got a lot of this in place. What we probably need to do is just sort of formalise it again to come up with that longer term plan of you know, where we need to be and one, you know, what we need to do to actually get there. Speaking to staff, they all get it. You know, it's not like we're having to sort of convert people along the way. And again, it's picking up on a lot of that social responsibility bit as well. There's a lot of that recognition already within the staff of, you know, why we're here, what we do and how we do it. So it's not going to take a great deal to sort of, you know, make that switch. We just have to be in a position, like a lot of businesses, it has to be said, where we've got to do that initial audit of, right, here's where we are. That's what we want to do, and that important middle gap of how we're actually going to get there. So we're on that journey, but we're still, you know, like I said, some work to go before we actually get there, both internally and externally as well.
I think that's the thing, though, you know, it's make a start and start somewhere. Start by measurement, start by making changes within your business. And once you start and you have those measurements, then you can just go further and further. Lewis, just want to bring you in. We've spoke a lot before about all the things that you do, not just with your community, but actually with your staff, and you come across as a really socially responsible business, and you know, you seem to really care about your employees. You've told me some of the things that you're doing before, but why don't you share a bit more about that work?
Yeah, certainly. So we very much at the Chamber try and practice what we preach, I think is a good way to put it, because obviously we spend a lot of time, as Chris has alluded to, educating our members about the best options and signposting them to relevant partners and organisations and people like yourselves who can give them expertise in certain areas like sustainability. But one thing that's really important is that we need to make sure that we look after our own house and keep our own house in order in that respect. We're very, very lucky that our organisation has been developed in a way that it is focused on supporting and empowering our staff. And that's something that comes down from the top, from our CEO, Clive. And it's very much about providing opportunities for individuals. So we work in a way that all of our staff have core responsibilities, but they have the ability to access other things that we do at the Chamber, particularly if they've got passions. We've got individuals who are extremely passionate about things such as sustainability and want to be involved in any of the work that Chris and his team do in that space. So we try and develop that. So we're very focused on personal development in terms of individuals' careers, but we also underpin that with a lot of support in terms of things like we have sort of healthcare packages for our staff, so they can access things like optical care, dental, therapy, even bereavement counselling. All of this is included within their employment with the Chamber of Commerce through our partners, Westfield Health. And we're also very much focused on providing support to our staff to ensure that they remain engaged with the business, despite the fact that at the moment we work in a hybrid manner, which was quite a big change. Obviously, we did, as everybody did, the full switch to remote during the lockdowns, and that took a lot of pastoral care from the management team in terms of checking in with staff members, making sure that they felt they were still plugged in and engaged with the business. But as we go into our new way of working, which is hybrid working, it's really important that we maintain that and we still give staff the ability to have social interaction. So we've got things that have been created in more recent times, like book clubs and various other groups. We've got sports teams and things like that that enable people to connect with one another. And we also ensure that our staff have access to a range of opportunities to follow passions that they have in their work. And that really, the ones that really sort of stand out to me tend to be focused on sustainability or inclusion diversity, really. And they're really key areas that we partner with organisations on to project and to, in some ways, endorse organisations that we trust to our members. But it works the same for us in terms of employee engagement. It gives our staff the opportunity to, one, see that the business are promoting values that they align with, which makes us a more attractive place to work. It means that we also attract individuals that believe in our values because they see that we work with organisations externally that project our views on inclusion, diversity, in equality, in terms of sustainability, all these different areas. But also it gives those individuals who have a passion for social responsibility, a passion for social causes, and a passion for their local area, the chance to do that during their work. And I think that actually leads to us retaining staff members and having a workforce that for the most part really care about the work outside of it just being a job that you come in and do day to day. And with us being an SME ourselves, even though we're the largest chamber in the UK, we need people that care. We need people that are willing to go above and beyond, or to stay around for an event in the evening, or to go and represent us at different events. So you really do need that in the workforce, but we certainly do see that through the empowerment of our own staff. And that really comes from the top down, from people like Chris, Clive Memmott, our CEO, who believe in giving people opportunities to, in all honesty, to make mistakes as long as you learn from them. And that's why the Chamber's a very, very, very comfortable place for people to learn and develop their own ideas. And that in turn makes us stronger and more adaptable.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoke to many of your employees there on numerous occasions and always feel that shines through. Do you, you mentioned hybrid working. Well, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. You know, I've always been in face-to-face. I've always been a strong believer in face-to-face, but I think this virtual and working from home, I think there's a mix for both. What are your thoughts? Some people are not too keen and think that we should be 5 days a week in our city centres and that. What are your thoughts on it?
It's a very interesting question, and you're right, it's coming out a lot more in the press at the moment, isn't it, that more hardline view of getting people back. I suppose at a starting point, if I tell you how we operate here, so for the last 2 years or so, we've operated on a 4-day working week at the Chamber. So that's a 4-day working week. It's not condensed hours or anything like that. It's 4 days of work, and you get an extra day of leave to accompany your weekend every working week. Now that we've come out of all of the restrictions related to COVID, the company pretty much operates on a hybrid policy. So 50% of your time is in the office and 50% of your time is work from home. And that's done in a flexible working manner. So it can be that if we've got individuals who have a commitment such as childcare or care for a relative or any other, home situations that need to be flexible, we work around that. So they can split up their days in the office. They can work half a day in the office and return home and work from home. In terms of how I find it and how it works, I think it works very well, but I agree with yourself, Sam. I think touch points are important. So for example, in our department, the membership and commercial department, Tuesday is what we refer to as our anchor day. So everybody in our team is in on a Tuesday. And that's intentional because, you know, there's some things that really need the creativity of sitting around a table and kind of thrashing out ideas. And also there's a social element and there's a responsibility for the team. I dread to think that, you know, there could be individuals that work in the same organization with us being quite a small workforce and not see each other for 6 months. It's a ridiculous thought. So we have that element where we've got the ability to be in touch with our colleagues. We have staff at the building because we need to be open to the public and to our members 5 days a week throughout the working week. But then we've also got the benefit of being able to work from home. And the autonomy of our team to manage their responsibilities and their workloads often means that they pick relevant tasks in relation to where they're going to be. If they're going to be in the office, then you want to be having your face-to-face meetings, whether they be with colleagues or clients, and you want to be collaborative working with your colleagues, and you maybe want to be doing certain things that require a bit of a team atmosphere or a bit of that buoyancy of what you get from being around others in the office. But then if you're writing reports, doing your admin, or you're doing individual phone calls to contacts or clients, then that's quite good to do at home when you've got the space and you've got the quietness and you've got the ability to work. We do offer staff members the ability to come in more if they wish. You know, quite a lot of particularly our younger staff members may be in shared accommodation, shared housing, where, you know, it's difficult to find the time and space for it to be quiet and for you to get your head down and work. So we do open it up for our staff all the time. But we've found it to be really, really successful. And it's a hugely attractive element, going back to what you said earlier, Sam, about how gone are the days of, you know, a bit of fruit as a perk or your salary and your holiday being what sells a job to somebody. We have to be attractive compared to other opportunities in the marketplace. And the idea of a 4-day working week and the attention that all of us have maybe refocused on the work-life balance due to COVID and due to being able to see our families more and spend more time at home makes the 4-day working week a really useful asset when you're recruiting new staff members.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Do you think you'll stay as a 4-day working week?
Yeah, we fully intend for it to be permanent.
Brilliant. Wow.
We're under the impression that going forwards, more and more companies will adopt this way of working. I know you've seen, you've seen a lot in the news in terms of companies that have maybe adjusted or, you know, maybe do half-day Fridays or do not. I've seen a lot of the 9-day fortnight. I don't know if you've seen that, where they have a 4-day week and then a 5-day week and then a 4-day week. So I think the mindset's starting to shift. We're really proud to be sort of a trailblazer, certainly in Greater Manchester in this area. But our view is that over time, staff will demand to be treated with the respect that they can achieve their work in their own timeframes. And although it's got to work for the business, and I think that's a really key part of that flexible working, it doesn't mean you can just, you know, it's only for the employee, it is for the employer as well. It's give and take.
Yeah.
But we're strong believers that over time you'll see, you know, upwards of 3/4 of businesses around the UK adopting this kind of working pattern. It might take 5 or 10 years, but we're pleased to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, and I see you nodding away there, Chris. It obviously is working for you too.
Yeah, it is, and you know, it's. I think the plans were always there to do it. It's like a lot of things with COVID. It just sort of brought the timetable a little nearer, didn't it? Really, so it made sense for a number of reasons to do that. From my point of view, the trick to making it work is good diary management. As Lewis has said, you know, you plan your diary now in a slightly different way. There's no point, for example, on the days that I'm in the office, if I'm just sat on Zoom calls all day, because I can do that at home, thanks very much. And, you know, all the benefits that go with that around, you know, no cars on the road, traffic, environmental, etc. So it's important around that. And, you know, it is flexible to the point that, for example, just over 12 months ago, just after Brexit sort of happened at the start of 2021, the teams are getting inundated with calls from members, basically just, how do we cope with this? So we had to bring some people back on a 5-day week, paid them for it, obviously made up the difference for that. And that's absolutely fine. There's been a couple of other occasions where we've had to just sort of bring people back in and say, right, you know, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to have to do 5 days because of, you know, a number of issues, deadlines, etc., and sheer work. That few and far between that we've had to do that, but it's there if needed, I think. And that's that bit around, you know, we actually need to do that from the point of view of the business bit of it, as well as the people bit. For me, I try and have every Thursday off. I've been able to spend a lot of time with my granddaughter over the last couple of years, which is something I've, you know, wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So it's great. And there's times when I've had to change my Thursday off to a Friday or some other day of the week because there's something on that day that I have to actually do or whatever it is. So yeah, it's here to stay. And as Lewis said, I think it will become more the norm as we go forward.
I do hope so, and I think that companies are going to have to compete to win employees, and I think that's in both sustainability and social responsibility.
It is important though, because people think I can get more money over the road or whatever it is. Yeah, but you're working 5 days. You're only working 4 days here, and sometimes it's okay, got that, you know, and you know, it's that comparison. People use that sort of monetary comparison when they're looking at jobs, for obviously more so probably now than ever with current cost issues and things. But you know, that's a big thing. You know, in effect, I say this to people. You know, in a way, you've got an extra 52 days leave.
Yeah, but the cost of living has gone up, but actually the money that we spend because we're working from home a lot of the time has gone down. You know, I work from home. I don't spend the same amount of money as when I used to go into the city every single day and on lunch and on travel and on everything else. So I think it does balance out, and what people are looking for is work-life balance and feeling valued. And I'm not sure if money is the number one reason that people are looking at the companies they're looking for, and it's starting to show its value, and this kind of thing really shows value. What kind of, I'm interested to know from both of you, I guess, on being more socially responsible, Lewis, like what the biggest challenges are for companies to do this.
Yeah, I think, and this does transcend into sustainability as well, which you two will certainly recognise. It's cutting through the noise a lot of the time. So there is a huge amount of great information. Let's take inclusion and diversity as an example, and that's on my mind. I'm speaking at an event about diversity of the supply chain later today. There is fantastic information out there, but there is a lot of information out there. And what that tends to do in my experience and with the businesses that I often speak to is that there are businesses that are very passionate about starting their journey of change. But the issue is because there's so much noise out there and so much information, they read a lot of it and then they revert to type and essentially improve or write a diversity and inclusion statement, a policy, and start to make small steps. And I'm not criticizing the small steps, but what businesses and particularly SMEs need help with is finding organizations and support that can help them to make tangible changes to the way that they actually operate, rather than the statements, the policy, the paperwork that goes behind it. And I'm not saying you don't need to do that part of it, but at the end of the day, having a fantastic, for example, diversity and inclusion statement is all well and good, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't then start to look at the way that you recruit individuals and unconscious bias within the recruitment process, or that you don't start to look at ways in which you can provide greater opportunities for workers of all different backgrounds to assume positions of responsibility within your organization. You know, you've got some fantastic businesses out there that have a strong public image about their inclusion and diversity ethos, but yet still struggle to have a situation whereby they either promote or they provide opportunities for young individuals of different ethnic backgrounds to find opportunities within middle management, within senior management, and particularly within board level. And that's something that we've aimed to really start to address at the Chamber, not just across in terms of racial background, but also in terms of opportunities for individuals from the LGBTQ+ community, equality in terms of opportunities for women, to make sure that we're addressing the gender pay gap. At the Chamber, we are very, very careful about vetting organisations that we work with in that area, because we're keen on those that start to make tangible change and provide businesses with the opportunity to actually sit down and look at their own processes and start to make, even if it's just baby steps initially, to provide opportunities. So we're part of an organisation called BURN, which is the Black United Representation Network. And they essentially are focused on, they're a membership organisation that Black-owned businesses can join, Black professionals can join, but also corporate allies, businesses that want to do better can join. And they are creating essentially a safe space for people to speak about these topics and to be honest about the fact that they need help in terms of tangible change to provide opportunities for young Black professionals and to provide opportunities for the next generation of Black business leaders. And that's just one example of work that we do at the Chamber. We also are partnered with an organisation called Pride Network, which is an LGBTQ+ directors and leaders network that bring together people to talk about the way that they can make sure that companies are providing a welcoming environment for people to essentially be themselves within business. And I think it's really, really important. And I think it's, going back to your question, one of the biggest challenges for businesses and SMEs is to actually identify the information that is going to help them to actually make actions rather than just essentially improve policies and to some degree play a little bit of lip service to what they want to do. And that's not a fault of the SMEs, and it's also not a fault of the organisations that provide help with diversity and inclusion statements and things. But our job as a Chamber, we're very lucky because we've got the 4,200 members, but we've also, we engaged with over 31,000 non-members in the last financial year. We need to use that platform that we've got to help to bring people and signpost people towards organisations that can actually help them to take action, even if it's, like you said, with sustainability, just those initial steps to improving. You know, there's nobody in the world that can hold their hands up and say they couldn't be better in terms of social responsibility in any facet of social responsibility. So everyone's got a requirement to look at what they do and improve, and to take on board the views of their staff and the different generations within their staff, particularly, you know, young people who are coming through into the workforce now, are extremely switched on to this sort of stuff. Take on board their thoughts and views around it, and make sure that you're producing an environment that that reflects the values of your business as a whole. But I do think SMEs need some help in terms of identifying those areas where they can make tangible change, and that they can educate and support and inform staff without feeling like they are criticizing staff, if you know what I mean. I think that's very similar in sustainability. It's about how you can be better, not what you're doing wrong at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I think it's important. I totally agree. Certainly when you look at the sustainability agenda, you know, let's, you know, pick any element of that. There's an awful lot of information out there, and sometimes it is bewildering and can be overwhelming. And actually that itself is a bit of a disincentive for people to start on what needs doing. I think also that last point Lewis made as well is so important. You know, there's a lot of people out there that when you talk to them and get involved in it, they feel like they're being, not by us, but by other people, they feel like they're being preached to about this stuff. And you want willing volunteers, don't you? You don't want people to be press ganged into being a better employer. That's not really what this is about, you know, being a better business, being forced to be a better business. You know, I'll go back to the Good Employment Charter. That started off originally as the Good Employer Charter, to which our first response was, does that mean if you're not a member, then you're a bad employer? Well, that's a great example there of turning people off right at the start of something. We made our point and we got the name changed. But that is so indicative of, unfortunately, where some of these initiatives are, that it's being developed away from real life, as it were, really. And while there are fantastic intentions, and nobody can deny that all this work needs doing, sometimes how that gets portrayed actually either bewilders people or puts them off because of the sort of, you know, feel like they're being hectored into doing something. We need volunteers, we need people to stand up. And I think sometimes, Lewis used a couple of examples, I do think sometimes the best advocates are from businesses themselves that are already doing this, to say, look, almost if I can do it, you can do it. And, you know, time and time again, we get those people from within our members and elsewhere to actually get those messages across to people, to show them, you know, it can be done.
Yeah, and it can be done, and there are so many. I mean, it's everywhere. You know, you can just reach out anywhere, and everyone's willing to help when it comes to being more sustainable and more socially responsible. No one's going to turn you away. No one's going to say, oh, you did it wrong. If you're doing something, then it's something. And I think, you know, you're right as well, Lewis, like that language and that confusion, and people are frightened, I'm going to say the wrong thing or I'm not going to get it right. And it's actually about, well, spend some time and educate yourself. And I know that's one of the things that is great about what the Chamber does, is help to educate their members. And I think the importance of that now, to be that guidance and inspiration, is so right. I'm just gonna finish on a last question from each of you, and that is what your hope is for the Greater Manchester community over the next year. Lewis, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. That's fantastic. Well, I suppose touching on some of the points that we've discussed, really, I've lived in Manchester now for about 18 years, and I've always been greatly impressed with the inclusive atmosphere of the city. I think what I would like to see is as we sort of re-emerge from the pandemic and we re-establish the new way of living, is that we take on board some of these points that we've made before about individuals' personal interests and passions. And you hit the nail on the head earlier, Sam. I don't think it's all monetary value in terms of employment anymore. I think it is about, you know, the business community reflecting the needs and wants of the general community in the area. And it's something that we've tried to do as a Chamber of Commerce for a long time. So what I would hope for the community is that we continue to work in a way that works for employees and businesses at the same time. I think that's probably some form of hybrid model, because you do need to get people back to the city centres. You know, Manchester's still, if you came here today, it feels quite busy, but if you remember what it was like before COVID, it's really not in comparison. So I think there's an element of that, because that sustains everybody and that helps drive the economy. But I also think it's starting to focus more on outputs as workers for businesses and outcomes, rather than you know, how much you're doing. You know, there's no point working really long hours if you're only going to get the same amount of outcomes that you would get from a shorter day, from a shorter working week. You know, it's about working smarter rather than working harder. And I think people have reached the point now where, you know, those kind of historical 12-hour days, you know, particularly, you know, it's stereotypical, but in industries like banking and things like that, I just don't think people are willing to do that in the same way anymore. So I hope our community continues to promote the values that that I believe Annie Burnham and Greater Manchester Combined Authority have tried to do throughout my time living in the city, certainly, but Manchester's always been proud of, and that's values of community. You know, we're a hard-working city, but we're a city that enjoys itself. You know, great music scene, nightlife scene, restaurant scene, as you'll well know. So I just hope that we live to come back stronger, and in doing so, our businesses, our organisations like ourselves at the Chamber are better representative of the makeup of the communities that we cover. And that's something that we need to do through better inclusion and diversity in the workforce, better representation in senior levels across businesses of all shapes and sizes. You know, we want to get to a point where it's much more, you know, normalized to, for example, if you're at a business conference or an event, for the whole panel to be diverse in terms of race, gender, age, everything, disabilities, all of that, that it's not even a talking point anymore. And that's a long-term aim. But I feel proud of Manchester as a city region, that I feel that as that comes, we'll be at the cusp of it. I really, really do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. And Chris, what about you? What are your hopes for?
It's hard to pick one, just as a focus, really. I guess there's a couple of things, actually, Sam. One is to come together more as a community. There's a lot of division, isn't there, these days? Everywhere you see somebody's having a rant about something's not working right, one thing and another. And we've got the power within ourselves to actually fix a lot of this. You know, it's not somebody else's problem, it's all our problem. And I think what we've got to try and do as a chamber is begin to capture some of that, to say, you know, we can bang the tables as much as we want. It doesn't actually achieve anything. What we want to do and what we do is to work on solutions. You know, don't just highlight the problems. We can do that all day long. What are the actual solutions, and more importantly, what is that going to look like? And you know, Greater Manchester is a fantastic place. Lived here all my life, mainly in Wigan. But you go around sometimes where I live, and you think, is this the same sort of city region as, you know, where I'm sat today doing this? Right in the city centre. Where's that connectivity? How does this community feel part of that community? And how are they aware of what, you know, some of the benefits are and some of the opportunities of one thing and another? I think we've really got to focus hard on making that community a proper community again, and bringing it together. There's a number of things that will happen over the next couple of years that will come out of the Mayor's office around, you know, simple things like, you know, full control over the bus network and bus services again over the next couple of years. We'll be the only place outside Greater London that will have a proper public transport system run by local authorities for the benefit of people, not the bus companies. That's such a major thing, and really will help bring those community bits together. So I think we're facing a tough period, but I think if people recognise that and get behind it, I think we can do great things. And as Lewis said, there's a fantastic history of this, and I think the Chamber plays an important part in that and taking it forward. And you know, we're sat in here today. We've got artwork on the walls by Ghislaine Howard.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, by Ghislaine Howard. It's the home of the Ghislaine Howard collection. We launched it a couple of weeks ago. Lewis did an awful lot of work to do that. We're virtually working in an art gallery. That's the way I see it. It's a great benefit for staff as well.
Right.
I enjoy coming to work. But what we're trying to do there is bring art and culture back into the commercial bit of things and then bounce that out into the community. So we're going to be focusing not just on Manchester, but all 10 local areas throughout Greater Manchester to say, this is the artwork, this is why it's important, this is how it resonates, this is why it's relevant as well in this world that we live in. And if we can link that with the commerce bit, then we're in a completely different area and somewhere we've never quite been before. And if that helps, like I said, with that wider community building, then we're certainly in the right place and doing the right thing.
That's lovely. I love that. Thank you. God, I just want to say that, I mean, every single communication, every single conversation that I've had with you guys at GMCC has always left me feeling like I just want to be part of it even more and more and more. You are doing such a great job. You're doing a great job for community, for business, and it really comes through the good that you want to do and how much you want to give back. So thanks for that. Thanks for your time today. It's been a great conversation. Some real insight and advice and guidance. And I think any organisation that's watching this is going to learn and get some good takeaways from it. So thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Sam.
All right, take care.
I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.